Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Audit Tuesday. This YouAttest podcast is going to focus on privileged users and the security concerns around these accounts, along with best practices to keep them secure. To bring this conversation to life, YouAttest is proud to have Synoptek, a leading managed service partner, on today's call. Specifically, we have Matt Murdock, V-CISO from Synoptek, George Rhodes, cybersecurity engineer from Synoptek, and Garrett Grayjack, CEO at YouAttest. Welcome, Matt and George.
Hello. Hello.
Thanks, Bill.
First of all, Matt, can you please introduce yourself to the Audit Tuesday audience and specifically what your firm Synoptek does?
Sure, absolutely. So my name's Matt Murdock. I lead the cybersecurity and GRC practice over at Synoptek, as well as act as a interim CISO for our most strategic clients. So Synoptek is a global leader in the managed service provider industry. We specialize across multiple industries, small and medium businesses up to enterprise, and we can be everything to a customer, from help desk, IT operations, through security and compliance management, or we could be any one of those facets individually. I think where our strength really differentiates us from other MSPs is because of our size. We're a global firm. We have major offices across the US, Canada, and India, and it allows us to be 24/7 for both IT operations and security. So that's me and my firm in a nutshell. George Rhodes is on my team, and I'd love to hear his introduction as well.
Yeah.
Go ahead, George.
Hello. Well, Bill, I'm a designated cybersecurity engineer with Synoptek, and I'm primarily responsible for engineering and implementing security solutions that protect our customers' assets and strengthen their overall security posture. So my role involves assessing risk, designing security architectures, deploying advanced security technologies, and most importantly, collaborating with clients to ensure compliance and resilience, against this evolving cyber threat landscape.
Well, great, George. So when a security person says privileged user, what are they referring to?
Yeah, a privileged user is someone who has elevated rights or administrative control over systems, applications, or data beyond that of a standard user. So privileged users pose a higher security risk if they're compromised, which is why organizations implement privileged access management, or PAM, solutions to monitor, control, and secure their activities. Those accounts are the ones where the threat actors can really do some damage, and so you got to be careful with those.
So Matt, what are the issues that come up from privileged users?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few ways to look at this. When I'm acting as a firm's CISO, the main thing that I'm concerned about are, where has this company grown? Where has there been turnover in the org? Are there stale accounts that have sat out on a domain for months or years? Are there folks that, when the company was small, were kind of single-threaded and did everything under the sun, and now that as the company's grown, they're overprivileged, right? They don't need to have as much access because there's other folks in their org that can help them out. And then specifically in the CISO seat, first year GRC programs, alignment to a known framework, alignment to a privacy law like GDPR, CCPA. There are absolutely access control requirements that organizations need to be aware of. First year of anything is always challenging. So when we're thinking about privileged users, I see it as, kind of it's a life unto its own, but identity and access management controls are across every single framework and law in the cybersecurity and data privacy space.
Yeah. And George, hackers love to target those admin accounts, right?
Oh, absolutely. So, hackers target these privileged accounts because they provide the elevated access to critical systems, sensitive data, and security controls. And, by compromising a privileged account, an attacker can move laterally, disable security controls, exfiltrate sensitive data, create backdoors, deploy malicious software. Obviously, all bad things that you want to stay in front of.
All right. So, Garrett, aren't these regulations and guidances on these? Aren't there regulations and guidances on these admin accounts?
Yeah, it's exactly as George was saying. Okay, these admin accounts and users in general are part and parcel of all the frameworks. Start with, of course, the NIST CSF, cybersecurity framework. But, maybe you're not on that. Maybe you're on something smaller that you like to go with, like CIS 18, or maybe you're more international and you like to do ISO 2701. Doesn't matter. Identities, and especially privileged identities, are part and parcels of all these frameworks. And then there's a little cut and paste that's going in there. So your frameworks, which we listed, your NIST and your ISO, your CIS, those get copied into the regulations. Be HIPAA. HIPAA is like who has access to PHI, your personal healthcare information. And then what about your financials? Who has access to your financial, PII, personal identifiable information? And then it also goes down the way, for other regulations like NERC-CIP for energy, and straight out also goes into, privacy, right? Who has access to that sensitive data? And now we have the defense industry, right? Who has access to the to that information as well, CUI. So, right, it's a best practice. It's acknowledged as a best practice that we got to be reviewing our identities and our privilege accounts, and that it's in all these regulations and frameworks.
Well, George, if these admin accounts are so important, how do their permissions get it so far out of whack?
Well, Bill, I'll tell you, it's surprisingly easy for PAM or privileged access management account permissions to get out of whack, whether it's due to poor access management, lack of oversight, and gradual accumulation of unnecessary privileges over time. That's a big one. So one common cause is the notion of privilege creep, and we've all heard that before. But it happens when users are granted additional permissions for temporary tasks, but never have them revoked. And so best practices to prevent privilege creep include things that your tool helps us do, right? Enforcing least privilege access, conducting regular access reviews, using privilege access management solutions to grant just-in-time access instead of these permanent solutions that can become a big problem later.
So what is to be done with privilege creep in a well-governed enterprise? Matt, do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what happens often in either growing environments or areas that have been bolted together through mergers, acquisitions, new framework requirements for a particular line of business. What happens is privilege creep, exactly like George says, right? Or we have multiple domains with multiple admins, right? So the identity and access management sprawl and privilege creep is evident. In those types of environments, those messy environments, I think of risk culture and tone at the top as the biggest drivers for change. If we find ourselves in situations where there's exceptions made for executives not to use MFA or do their security awareness training, or we just assume that they're an executive, so they must be in an environment where they can have access to a lot of things, right? We get into this situation where there's exceptions to every policy, and what happens is least privilege and need to know completely go out the window. So I see the most mature environments and clients that we work with are in situations where executive sponsorship, executive leadership teams are really bought into the idea of need to know. And when they follow the rules, when executives are part of user access reviews, when executives are part of change requests, we find that it's a lot easier for folks like George, who are then on the engineering side conducting these user access reviews. It's a lot easier for folks like him to really push back on the business of, listen, you don't need admin rights because your CEO doesn't have admin rights. So, yeah, it's the risk culture that'll get you when it comes to privilege creep.
Yeah. But some customers have to start from scratch. For example, their identities are not aligned
Right.
for security and compliance.
Yeah. Yeah. So and in those situations, right, if you're thinking about a company that has just completely grown through M&A or rapid organic growth, we find that sometimes it's easier to build from the ground up than try to fix things piecemeal. So we're often working with companies that are PE backed. They've gone through this rapid organic growth, and they rely on an MSP to scale with them, right? So Synoptek, some 1,000+ people around the globe. I often say to clients, right, we're your 1,000 person IT org, right? And we can scale with you, and we can follow the sun, and we could be 24/7. So I think in those situations, right, where you do have to start from scratch, where you do have to be in a first year GRC framework, you have to be aligned to a new law or data privacy standard. It's best to bring in a third party, even if they're just in kind of a consulting point of view, just to sort of check what's best practices in your particular industry. But it's always good to get an extra set of eyes. Use a tool like YouAttest, do that type of privilege access management audit, or pen test against user accounts, and just get a current state assessment of what does our IAM program look like here.
Great. So George, this is pretty common in the industry.
Oh,
Right?
yeah. It's extremely common that enterprises are in some need of a thorough discovery and review of their identities. Be it from poor access management procedures or, as Matt said, merger and acquisition or any number of other causes. It just occurs, and you see it across the industry. So the result of not conducting regular reviews definitely adds risk and weakens an organization's security posture. And I'll tell you, that's why as an MSP, we're so excited about YouAttest and the capabilities it brings. And so by integrating YouAttest into our customers' PAM and identity governance strategy, we're definitely able to enhance security, maintain compliance, and minimize the risk of this unauthorized access.
Great. And Matt,
Yep.
how can organizations balance security with operational efficiency when implementing PAM?
Yeah, it's tough. In security, we're often like the office that says no, and we don't make a lot of friends in the security world. But I would always just advise that you just have to look you have to look at your business from a risk-based approach, right? If we are talking about accessing state secrets, intellectual property, the secret formula to your special to your special drink or whatever, right? Obviously that needs to be taken with the utmost care. If we're talking about access to basic standard things for folks to just submit their timesheets and carry on with work, and email colleagues, right? We can not scale back the controls, but maybe scale back, how much scrutiny is used for these standard users. So like anything in life, we accept risk, and we try to transfer and mitigate it. Just like anything, we put on our seatbelts, right? We we buy cars with airbags. So just like anything, right? If you're driving a Formula One, you're going to have different safety tools put in place. If you're driving down the street to go grocery storing, you're gonna accept a little bit more risk. So I think running a business from an identity and access management standpoint is no different. There's risks that you have to accept, and as long as you're taking a risk-based approach to access, it really shouldn't have much of an issue on operational efficiency.
And Garrett, I know you're a big fan of zero trust. What role does zero trust play in effective PAM strategy?
I'm such a big fan. I always show this slide, and I really like it. I like the cybersecurity infrastructure, security agencies diagram here. Okay. I mean, the fact that they're a Fed agency and they use the word security twice in their name, that's kind of funny, I think, but that's neither here nor here. What's really relevant is, though, you join Synoptek and Synoptek starts doing your YouAttest access reviews automated. You're already then at the initial phase of zero trust when it comes to identity. Remember, they have their system that has like 5 different pillars, and one of them is identity. And what they say is your traditional zero trust, your traditional is ad hoc. Oh yeah, we'll get Bob to make a spreadsheet and he'll send it out, and then maybe we'll throw some Jira tickets, and there's no order, there's no automation. That's what CISO says is traditional. Your initial phase is let's get started. And that's what YouAttest is. It's an automated way to do your access reviews that Synoptek knows how to do. Then what you do is you keep working with Synoptek, and what they're able to do is they're able to turn on triggers in the YouAttest product. You know that old Caesars hack, MGM hack, where they hacked the Okta, and what they did is they didn't hack the Okta, guys. They created a new IDP. They duplicated, then redirected all the damn agents over to a different thing. So when they asked them, hey, how much damage was done? They're like, oh, if we know. I mean, the log files are there, but they're somewhere in China or something, right? So advanced state is those triggers go to the Synoptek SOC team, and that can help you monitor, and that's advanced. Now, optimal, this is where it gets fun, because this is, let's have some fun and show you, is we built a patent on the concept of integrating these access reviews into what we call an identity trust score, okay? And then what we do is we have Synoptek work with us, and they can integrate this trust score into your other services. So that's advanced stage. No, first of all, guys, anyone tells you that their product is optimal zero trust, just say, all right, nice lie. Just give me the whatever Chotsky you're giving me. I'll take the power pack. That's what I always like. Power packs when I have the boots. No one's optimal. Optimal is getting products like YouAttest to work with your other products. That is optimal in zero trust. And that's why you work with Synoptek, and they can help you say, hey, it would make a lot of sense, since I have this wonderful YouAttest identity trust score, if I integrate this into my authorization. It's called CDAR in AWS. Let's integrate that. Or let's integrate this in this mechanism before I take this. That's when you really start reducing your risk. So it's a journey. And that's why I like the CISO model hill. It's a journey. You get started by working with Synoptek. We get our initials, we get our triggers, then we start using things like our AI-based trust score and integrate that into other products.
Hey, great. Thanks for that. Let's talk compliance.
I didn't tell you all, there was a snafu in the beginning, but we've been live since like 5 minutes or so.
Great.
Yeah. So Matt, let's talk some compliance.
Sure.
How do organizations demonstrate compliance with privileged access policies during an audit?
Yeah. It's a good question. I think that every auditor is different. If you have a robust internal audit department, hopefully your internal audits are harder than your external audits. And for anyone with a military background that's gone through an inspection or an audit, it's a very different experience altogether. So I would say that in general, auditors are people too, right? They're our friends. And I think that, in most of my experience, either being on the audit staff side of it or working with a client that is going through the audit, you really just want to show the auditor confidence in you know what you're doing. You know that if it's not perfect, you have a plan of action to get to perfect, right? To use Garrett's example, talk about your maturity today, right? This is how we do it. It is ad hoc, it is done on Excel, but we have gotten the budget and the resources, and we're working with this partner to get us to the advanced state. Um, and being able to tell the story of like, hey, this is where we are, this is where we want to be, goes a long way. When you're in an environment where you're aligning to a very clear control, right? You're looking at NIST and you're talking about access control. I think it's very easy to say, yes, we're in compliance with something because of the design effectiveness of the policy or the operational effectiveness of your change control board. From a compliance standpoint, I think that we just want to show continual improvement, audit over audit. So back to Garrett's example, right? Last year we were on Excel spreadsheets and we were using the intern to do user access review. Okay, now we've put some money and muscle behind this, and we started working with George over at Synoptek, and during year one, he did a single kind of one-off YouAttest assessment. The goal next year and the budget for next year is George now does these quarterly, and then third and fourth year, right? We're trying to be at the top of the mountain in Garrett's example, right? So the compliance controls aligned to a particular framework or a law are kind of open-ended by design, because then they can be industry agnostic, size of company agnostic. But what does compliance mean to this company? Ideally, it's continuous improvement, audit over audit.
Awesome, thanks. So Garrett, all this talk on automation and review of privileges, isn't this what YouAttest does?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing, and that's exactly what Matt was saying. Let's take you in the first step, and the first step is let's automate, and that's what we've done with our lives the last 5 years is automate the process. When we built this thing, literally what we did is interview humans, because access reviews are a process. And I got my two favorite people. I got my old CISO from SecureAuth, and I got Raj, an auditor, and he was doing an audit when I was at BlackBerry. Anyways, I said, so Raj, what are you asking Kelly? Kelly, what are you responding with? Okay, and that's how we built the product. We built it with understanding the requirements of the process. The AI is cool. The AI does help you figure out which accounts to review and all that. But an access review is a time-consuming process. And if you don't have a tool, that walks you through it, which George and Kasha will be showing you, it's a pain in the ass. And what's really relevant, if you don't automate it, it's usually not worth doing, because the error rate, they say, on manual audits is as high as 60%. So yes, automation is key, Bill.
Yeah. And George, this is what Synoptek has been trained to do. And now Synoptek is offering to manage these reviews for customers and new customers, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate Garrett's notion of this being a journey, but I think you're going to be surprised at how quickly you can make progress. So speaking from our experience with YouAttest, we were able to very quickly integrate YouAttest into a very complex customer environment, sync the account data, and get to a place where we very quickly conducted our first audit and review. And one of the YouAttest features we really appreciate, as Garrett was saying, is the automation capability. It helps us enforce least privilege, it reduces human error, and it helps us maintain continuous compliance, all while minimizing the administrative overhead. So all those are huge wins for us when we're looking at doing these types of audits and reviews.
Great. Hey, Kasha, if you want to share your screen and do a little demo for us.
Absolutely. Let me go ahead and do this. Hopefully you will be looking at my screen in the next 2 seconds. Please let me know when you do.
We see it.
Voila.
All right, so here's the YouAttest dashboard that Synoptek's been using as well, and you know, just to cover the basis, we started this as a platform where you can integrate YouAttest to your IAM, to your identity and access management platform, and we are able to fetch the entitlements on the fly into YouAttest for your engineers and for Synoptek to take care of those by creating audit and assigning them and delegating them to the relevant people within the organization to decide whether this person should have this kind of access for this particular resource or this particular group, right? So it's not like one man's job, or you don't have like FDEs dedicated to do this in the organization. It's Synoptek who's taking care of your audits for you, and then they are delegating it to your direct line managers, to your group owners, to your application owners within your company to decide what do you want to do with this ID for this person. So that's where it starts, and then it addresses certain application or resources that are operating out of their own silos without getting connected to the IAM platform, where the CSV engine comes in, and Synoptek can have, those CSV files imported into YouAttest, and the YouAttest will ingest that information to create audit for you, and then Synoptek will be able to delegate those to your direct line managers and whatever you can do with the integration piece of it. The the other thing we built into the product is where there are clients who have on-prem AD either as an exclusive option, as an exclusive platform, or an exclusive identity source of record, or maybe they're running some kind of a hybrid model, like something on-prem, others in your Okta, in your Microsoft Azure, Entra ID, or other platforms. So we built an agent that, remaining within the same YouAttest tenant, you can install that agent onto any machine that is joined to the domain, right? It doesn't have to be the domain controller itself, but any machine that is joined to the domain, you can install that agent onto that machine, and then you can run ad hoc sync. Whenever you need to fetch the data, only then you run the sync, instead of keeping it connected 24/7, which is not secure sometimes. So it will fetch the data for you from the particular OUs that you're going to target, or from the particular groups within that OU, and fetch the users, fetch the groups and the nested groups from there, and let you see who has access to which group, because in most of the times groups have permissions and privileges instead of like individual users in there. So the users inherit those permissions from those groups. Once you know who are the members of those inside those groups, you will be able to find out, well, what should I do with it? Whether I should go ahead and revoke these identities or their access to those groups, or should I go ahead and certify because we need these accesses in these individuals? And going into the last part, because that was something we also discussed with Synoptek as well, and they were interested, and they're also, running these audits for their clients now. It's pretty easy, at least on the front end, where you can install the agent on any machine that is joined to the domain. Once you have done that, you can add a connection. For example, it gives you like a single AD domain that you can choose from here, from the dropdown. And then you can choose, well, I want to see certain OUs, but within those OUs, I want to see these groups. Who has access to these 4 groups out of 10 within a particular OU? So it can create an audit for you by running that sync for that particular group or that particular OU, by creating those syncs in here in the YouAttest. And then you can also target individual or on all the OUs to see what are the groups and nested groups within those organization units. Once you have the information, for example, you have 1,000 users, And every user is associated with 5 groups, for example, right? Or 50 groups for that matter. So that sync will run on ad hoc basis. We'll save that information for you in YouAttest. And all you need to do after it's concluded is to go into user audits and create an audit out of that information you received from as a result of that sync. But in case, like in the instead of going for API integration, just choose the Active Directory in this case. And in the dropdown, it will give you all the syncs you have created. So you can target a particular sync and target the date. For example, you want to complete this audit within the next 7 days, for example, right? So you can choose 7 days and let's say 12. Click next. And it should, or is it this? Okay. I didn't get the right date. Audit name. How could I forget this? Yeah, so it's a demo audit, for example. Now it should let me create the audit by showing me whether you want to target all the OUs in this sync, or do you want to go for selected OUs? So if I go for selected OU, I have this one OU selected here that sets YouAttest. What do you want to do? Do you want to go by group and see who has access to the groups that OU has within it? And I can target, well, okay, I need to see this group, and that group, 1, 2, and 3. I don't need the alpha group because, that's something else that has to do with some other audit. I'll just go for these 3 and I'll select all users and click done. Now what's happening, the data we received as a result of that sync, it is allowing YouAttest to create audit out of that information. Once the audit is here, you can go and see the users in there, but most importantly, you can always review what kind of access they have when it comes to groups and the nested groups. So if you don't want that user to have access to these groups or any of these groups, you can just choose those, select those, and say, well, revoke the access of this person for these 2, but for the rest of them, go ahead and certify the access because we need their access in certain groups. And that way you can review these groups, their access. There's a limited data in the demo account, but you will see users in these groups and in these subgroups, or you call them child groups. Sometimes you call them nested groups. So you will be able to review these and produce a report at the end of the process. Let's say I just certify the whole thing here. I'm doing this just for the demo, but when it comes to an admin, you can easily auto-delegate or manually delegate to anyone you like within the organization. That's what the admin will do when they will create this audit for you or on your behalf. So they can delegate to your managers, they can delegate to the group owners, they can delegate to security and compliance people within your organization and let them decide what they want to do with this audit. Once they're done with that, the admin, for example, George at Synoptek, he will be able to refresh the audit page and we'll see, well, if it's 100% done by those managers and those reviewers, and he will run the report for you, which will be either in PDF or in CSV format, depending upon the number of users you have, in that particular audit.
And
so once you have this,
if I could jump in real quick, one thing, Kasha, that
absolutely,
I love about the tool is that, right, whether you are a security manager, a CISO, a GRC analyst, you can work in this tool, right? It is not just an auditing tool. It's an operational, this is part of someone's day in, day out tool. But then on the complete flip side of that, right, it is a very impressive audit tool. And for those companies out there that are going through SOC 2, either for the first year or their 5th year, that when you're working with an auditor, there's various ways for you to prove that you're meeting the intent of controls, right? And one of them is walkthrough. So I think what I love most about the way YouAttest is designed, if I put on an auditor hat, is that if I were sitting across the table from George and George tells me that quarterly he does a user access review of 25% of the system, right? If it was all based off Excel spreadsheets, as an auditor, I would have to be looking at 3 or 4 different bits of evidence. He'd have to show me a list of users. He'd have to show me that he's done these things. He's time stamped his user access reviews. But if I were an auditor and I was sitting across from George and Kashif and they told me, "Hey, look at these are the 4 quarterly audits we've done." You could see when they were reviewed. You could see who they were assigned to. And then as an auditor, I'm in a much more comfortable position where I'm probably going to stop asking questions, right? Like we've checked the
Exactly.
box,
Yeah.
we've shown that we've met the intent of the control, we've met the intent of NIST access control language. And from a third party standpoint, unless this is a full, substantive audit where we're looking at every single thing over and over again, from a high level, from a design effectiveness standpoint, I mean, I've already, as an auditor, again, I've already been proven by George and Kashif that they're doing user access review.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's to move away from dealing with long Excel sheets with the check boxes that says, well, I have done this, and there is no proof it has actually been done. And then if you have to filter out certain identities from there, I mean, it's a nightmare if you're doing it manually. You'll have to go through the whole list of users, a pile of other roles and access privileges, and screenshots and emails, and you have to, keep sending those reminders to the people who are responsible for reviewing and doing the attestation for these identities. Whereas in this tool, we have moved away from that manual painful process by automating even the nag email part, where you don't have to write a single email. The whole thing is just clicking through the GUI.
Yeah.
The only manual part that is in there is when a manager or when an admin tries to put in a comment, for example, to justify the recommendation or action made by a reviewer. For example, you revoke somebody or you recommend to revoke somebody's access. Why did you do it? That comment becomes your justification in front of the auditor. That's the only manual thing you need to do. The rest is just clicking through the GUI.
Mm-hmm.
And
Hey,
I'll tell you, Kashif, there's a couple of things I really appreciate about the YouAttest design because it really aligns with real life and what you see out in the wild, so to speak, right? So number one, it's rare that you're going to have just an on-prem AD environment and that's your single IDP. So your ability to integrate with all of these different tools, be it, an MFA solution like Okta or Centrify or cloud, Azure AD or on-prem AD, being able to integrate those all in one view is something I really appreciate. And I like the ability to be able to conduct the reviews based off of need by group and not having to do an entire OU. If you were doing this manually, it would be very, very difficult to do it on a group by group basis. So it just shows that you guys kind of designed this with the real world in mind, right?
Right, and that's what Garrett said. I mean, this product was designed based on the feedback and based on suggestions made by real auditors, right?
Yeah.
And made by the people who were actually responsible for these security regulations and compliance pieces.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's not, we are not stopping here. We always welcome our partners like Synoptek to come up and suggest changes and suggest improvements and enhancements into the tool as per their how they see their clients, how they get feedback from them, and we're always open for changes and make enhancement into the product.
Hey, Kashif, one thing you didn't cover. What about
Guilty as charged.
what about identities that aren't in the IAM?
Right. The identities that are not in the IAM, for example, there are 2 reports, if you're referring to that, Bill. One is the siloed report that we generate at the start of the even before Synoptek starts your audit. For example, you're a client, you need to clean up your identities, right? You have ghost accounts. You could have orphan accounts that were stale in there. Nobody has tried to remove those accounts, and now those people are no longer with the organization, but their IDs still exist. So the good point or the best point to start your audit process is to go for running those reports right after the integration with your IAM, because what these reports do, like siloed resources and HR to IAM resource variance report, is it runs your HR feed, for example, and it runs it against your IAM. And it gets you all your ghost and orphan accounts on either side, whether it's your HR, it has more data than your IAM, or it's the IAM that has more data than your HR. You are dealing with your ghost accounts or orphan accounts. That's what it does at the start of the audit process, where your IT desk or your security or your IT admins can take care of those orphan accounts, stale accounts, get rid of them, and only do the audit for what you have today in your system. And same goes for the applications. For example, you have legacy applications that have been sitting there for like 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, right? They're not connected to your IAM. They're not connected to your cloud identity resource, but you still need to review and attest those identities that have access to those applications. That's where the siloed report comes in. Same as HR feed, you get the CSV file from your application in the isolated or in its own silo. You run it against the IAM, and you get your ghost and orphan accounts on that application as well. So once your identities are cleaned up, it's easier for anyone like Synoptek or a client to create actual real audits for you without a doubt that there will be no ghost or orphan accounts within this data.
Well, thanks for that, Kashif. And George or Matt, you want to jump in? How would a new customer get started with Synoptek?
A great question. So I would say strictly from a security standpoint, typically where we we see new clients is they're at some type of a inflection point. They're either a smaller company that's growing rapidly and they have concerns about hiring at the pace that they need to, so they use a firm like ours who can scale with them. There's other case studies where either a company like just took on PE funding, or they have a very robust 3-5 year roadmap where they're going to double in size and get acquired, right? There's some inflection point going on, and it makes sense for them to now up their game from a security standpoint. And I know we've said it multiple times here, but the biggest driver from an inflection point standpoint is that they're going for first year blank, right? First year SOC 2. They've done a SOC 1 for a certain line of business, and now they're going to do SOC 1, SOC 2 for an entire enterprise. They're in the defense industrial base, and now CMMC is a new acronym they got to worry about. So yeah, I would say for current clients or maybe prospective clients that are considering working with an MSP like Synoptek, it's really answering the question of like, where are you in the economy, right? What industry, what size, and then really what's your business strategy? Are you in a cost savings mode? Are you in a rapid growth mode? And how could a partner like Synoptek help you? That's usually the biggest entry point, that inflection point for new clients.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Let's just to wrap it up, George, tell the audience how they can reach you.
Oh, absolutely. So I can be reached via email at grhodes@synoptek.com. And if you're an organization that needs some help to get your arms around your privileged accounts, we can certainly help with that. So we'd be happy to hear
Great.
from you.
Yep. And I'm at mmurdock@synoptek.com. I'll post my my LinkedIn to this recording, and happy to speak to anyone about security services in general or identity and access management specifically.
Thanks. And Garrett, YouAttest?
YouAttest, we're at youattest.com, of course, or just write us at info@youattest.com. And just because, believe it or not, people, we get pings from the universities for these. Just write us and we'll give you complete access to all of the Audit Tuesdays or so. We already got 2 universities already using these for training sessions and a 3rd one coming. So great stuff, guys. Yeah, we missed the first 5 minutes live on the LinkedIn. That was a LinkedIn thing, but we rocked through it, and we have a full recording up. Most importantly, the demo and all the questions will be in both the LinkedIn Live and the YouTube. So thanks a lot, George. Thanks a lot, Matt. Great stuff, Kashif and Bill. All the best.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Bye.
All the best. Bye.